What is up, everybody? Let's do it. It is finally time. We are talking about the Final Fantasy pre-release. We have all the cards leaked. We have examples of people opening packs on the cards, and we even have situations where people are playing the cards. Today, we have so many things to talk about. First off, without any further ado, we are going to jump into setting up and getting yourself ready and prepped and things to know for the pre-release. Let's take a look. As you see here, I have some reminders. So what are things that you should do or bring to the pre-release? First off, bring some snacks. Sometimes people don't get a chance to eat before. Bring some snacks. Then next up, dice, because you're going to roll. You're going to want them for certain markers potentially. And then after that, we have drinks. Drink of your choice. Obviously, the LGS that you're playing at, they are going to probably have snacks and drinks that you can purchase there. But if there's something special that you want, make sure you bring drinks. Then next up, you want to bring sleeves so you can sleeve up your cards. Hey, if you pull something good, you don't want to crinkle it necessarily the first time you try to shuffle. Also, just easier to shuffle with cards sleeved up. Specific counter markers, so things of maybe if you give something lifelink, blank tokens. So this set has a ton of different tokens that they are coming in with. Heroes, we have, birds and mages. Probably not going to get all of the cards that you need to make tokens for your deck. And your LGS probably isn't going to have every single one or enough to go around for everybody. Bring like blank tokens, maybe a piece of paper. What I like to do is the blank tokens they used to give in packs, put them in a penny sleeve and bring a dry erase marker. I want to talk about tips going into the pre-release, just some general reminders. Well, they are 40 card minimum decks. You can always add more, but 40 is the minimum. And then 16, 17-ish lands, depending on how you're feeling, how the curve is looking on your deck. With this set especially, removal is king. You obviously always want to put in some removal. This set has plenty of things you're going to want to deal with, plenty of things to deal with them. Removal is king. Finally, the Final Fantasy tricks. So, what are some mechanics that are going to be in the set that we need to talk about and look out for? So, first up, job select. It comes on a bunch of equipment, and basically what it is when the equipment comes into play, you get a 1/1 hero that equipment gets attached to. So it's kind of a nice, interesting 2-for-1 that you have there of not only do you get an artifact, but you also get a creature with it already attached to it. Next up, tiered. So what is tiered? It's just an additional cost that you can pay on cards. So if it's a 1 mountain is the cost for the card, a 0 cost, and then you could choose to just cast it for the 1 mountain, or you could cast it, maybe the second one is 3. You could cast it then for 4 total, get that second, and maybe the last one is like 4 colorless and a mountain, so you could cast it for 6. That's going to be what the tiered cards are. If it doesn't make a ton of sense, we'll look at it in a second. Next up, saga creatures. So we, for the most part, unless you're new, welcome, Final Fantasy fanatics. Sagas have been around forever. Not forever, but for a long time now. And they usually have 3 or 4 chapters on them, sometimes more. On your draw step, you put a counter on it, and however many amount of counters are on it, that ability will trigger. So if you have 2 counters on it, you look for where there's the 2 effect, and you trigger that ability. With this set, we have creatures that end up being sagas also. And that is going to be our summons that everybody knows Final Fantasy has in basically every single game. So it was an interesting way to make it so they have that timed effect like they do in the game. We have a couple of them that we're going to talk today, but there are so many in the set that are so good. In addition to that, we have cards, especially from Final Fantasy 16, that have the transform effect. So what is the transform effect? Well, it'll come in as a creature, and it'll have some sort of ability on it. It does a thing, and then there will be an additional cost, and you can tap it, and it transforms. You flip the card over, and it becomes a saga creature. After the saga creature is done, and it gets the maximum amount of counters and leaves the battlefield, it ends up actually flipping over to the front side, finally, we have recurring mechanics in Adventure, Land Cycle, and Crew. So we have lands that we'll talk about in a minute that have an adventure effect on it. What does that do? Well, it gets exiled in a going on an adventure zone, and then you can pay the cost and play it from there. With lands, you don't have to pay the cost, so if you haven't played a land, you can just put it right onto the battlefield after it goes on the adventure. Land cycling, there are specific things: forest, mountain, swamp cycle, plain cycle, and you're going to see a pay cost there. Basically what you do is you discard the card from your hand, you put it into the graveyard, and then you can go and find whatever style of land that cycling was. So if it's mountain cycle, you pay, say, 2, discard it, go and find yourself a mountain, put it on the battlefield. And Crew, this has been very reoccurring, so if you've played, you know it, but if you're new, once again, I'll talk about it. The Crew effect is going to be on vehicles, and everything except for, I believe, two vehicles in this set have a Crew 1, so it's super easy to get vehicles up and running in this set. And what Crew is you can use a creature on your battlefield, tap it, and say it crews or is driving that vehicle, and then the vehicle becomes a creature until the end of turn. Now, once it becomes a creature, obviously if you just played the vehicle on that turn, the creature will still have summoning sickness. That is going to be the Final Fantasy mechanics that we have. Now, let's jump into the cards, what everybody's waiting for. All right, our first group that we have right now, and it's going to be 6 cards, is the tiered cards that I just talked about in the Final Fantasy mechanics. First off, we have Vincent's Limit Break, and like I said, it's 1 in a black, and it has 3 different tiers that you can actually pay the additional to cast on, right? So we have the 0, the 1, and the 3. And this is a great card because it is kind of like protection. It's going to be a great card, great way, like I said, to get around removal. I'm excited to see this card. I hope I get a chance to play it. We have Tifa's Limit Break. This one is going to be absolutely terrifying. It's going to be a great card, great combat trick that's going to come in, and if you get it, yeah, play it. Next up, we have Thunder Magic. Good little targeted removal. Definitely a card to look out for. Then we have Restoration Magic. 3 tiers again, and a great way basically to protect your creatures, but also gain a little bit of life off of it. Paying 5 to protect basically everything and gain 6 life. Insane. Great card. Fire Magic. This one has been out for quite a bit. A nice little targeted removal towards a creature that maybe has damage on it and you just need something to finish it off. Ice Magic is going to be our last tiered card. You know, it's just a good way to get something off the board that's being troublesome. So that's going to be a great card just to give you a little bit of breathing room. That is all of our tiered cards. Now we are going to get into the crystal cycle. The crystals, they, for whatever color they are, they'll reduce spells that you cast by 1 colorless. So that's great. We have the black one here, and this is going to be a good one to run if you think you're going to run up against a bunch of graveyard decks. What you end up doing is you exile cards for your opponent, and they don't get to really put anything that dies into their graveyard. Plus you're gaining life off of it. It's a really good one, and the crystals themselves are not bad at all. So Darkness Crystal, watch out for it. Next up, Fire Crystal. It gives you that reprieve on your cost. Also gives your creatures haste, which is so good. So good. And then you can create a copy of target creature. I think if you're getting there, you're probably closing out the game, but it's a nice little one to throw into really any creature heavy deck that you're looking to run. Next up, we have the Earth Crystal, and this one is just a powerhouse. I feel like in this set you just basically double the +1/+1 counters that you end up putting on creatures. Earth Crystal, like the rest, if you get it, let's play it. Wind Crystal is going to go in any sort of lifelink deck that you have. You're gaining twice as much life. I'm saying it's fantastic, but it's probably the second weakest out of all of the crystals. but it's still so good. And finally, Water Crystal. This is going to be the one that whenever opponent mills a card, you mill that many +4. So insane value that you can potentially get, especially in one of these type of sealed settings. This is going to be my weakest because it's not very versatile across many decks. All right, next up, we are diving into those legendary lands that we talked about with the adventure on them. Let's take a look. First off, we have the red one, and that's going to give you a 0/1 black wizard token that when you cast non-creature spells, it deals 1 damage. And then, like I said, on an adventure card, it goes into an exiled adventure zone, and then you can immediately play that card from there as a land. This cycle does enter taps, but I mean, the value that you get out of adventures, so good. Now we have Midgard, the black one, and its adventure. Just the fact that you can sacrifice an artifact or creature, and then if you do, draw 2 cards. I'm looking at job select and I'm saying, yeah, that's value. I'm drawing 2 cards if I have this card in my... And next up, the blue one. Target opponent mills half their library rounded down. The cost on this though is super heavy. I don't think it's going to see a lot of lower end kind of fast format play, but Commander will like this. If you pull it, I think you probably maybe try to play it in the pre-release if you have a mill deck going. And then we have the green one. So this guy, you're going to create a 1/1 hero token, and then you put counters on it for each land you control. Earth Crystal, it's going to be a real beefy 1/1 hero. You get it, I think you play it. Even though it's that same cost that we were talking about with the blue one, I think the effect and the swing that can happen on the battlefield when you play this card for the adventure cost is just unreal. And last up, we have the Plains Adventure. So return 2 target artifacts and or enchantments from your graveyard to your hand. Good value. Once again, we can talk about it. The job select equipments is just an easy one that you can look at and get 2 cards for 1. So now we are going to dive into removal and look at some of the really good removal that if we get in our pools, we're taking for sure. First up, Ultima. Yeah, if you're not playing an equipment deck and maybe like a Spell-Slinger deck looks at this card and goes, yeah, I don't care about creatures and I don't care about artifacts, so I'll wipe their board. That's really good. Also, if you're playing down, I think Ultima is a savior for you. So that is one to look at. Now we have Light of Judgment, and dealing 6 to a target creature and destroy up to 1 equipment attached to that creature. Most creatures I feel like you're probably killing with 6 damage, but getting rid of an equipment, especially a troublesome one, yeah, great. Then Blazing Bomb, the 1-drop bomb that you pull out of your deck. This is going to be really good in a Spell-Slinger and maybe a Counters Matter deck, but also the fact that you can sacrifice it and just deal its power directly to a target creature. This could save you, and this could get something ridiculous out of your way. Good card. Now, Cloud of Darkness. This one, ooh, this one's a good one. So you look in your graveyard, you have 10 permanents in it. You can target a creature your opponent controls and give it -10, -10. Card is going to be a pain. Yes, it's a 5 cost, but I think you just always play it. And yes, this is one that you're definitely playing in like a graveyard deck, but I just want to talk about how good this card can actually be. Great removal. Now, Swallowed by Leviathan. So yes, it's a counter spell, and it forces your opponent to pay 1 for each card in your graveyard. So it gets around the whole permanent thing, because it can be spells. But you also get that surveil cost too. So you have potential to increase the value of what your opponents have to pay just off of the cast here. Now, Overkill. This is actually one of my favorite removals I think that they've published in the Final Fantasy set. but giving something basically negative 10,000 until end of turn, that takes care of indestructible things. That takes care of basically almost everything else unless they have like protection from black. An easy take. And then Nebelheim of Flame, choose target creature, and it deals damage to each other creature. Yeah, it's going to be good. And then your guy can just swing in and still do damage. And then also Flashback, which the Flashback is insane because you discard your hand and then you draw 4. It's going to be a good card. Suplex. This is how you're going to deal with troublesome artifacts also, because it has that exile effect. Yes, the first one is interesting because you can deal 3 damage and essentially exile the creature if it dies, but I think that exile target artifact, that's what you're running it for, really. Self-destruct, just, hey, I'm going to deal X damage, which is the power of my creature, to any other target. So that's going to be good because it's not just any other target creature. You can deal it to your opponents too. Perfect. And finally, our last removal card, Sephiroth's Intervention. And destroy target creature and you gain 2 life. Perfect. Perfect card. So next up, we are going to dive into the different deck types real quick. First off, we have Graveyard. So looking at a Graveyard deck, we have this card, which does have landfall, but you may discard a card. So you're filling up your graveyard, and then you can return a saga from your graveyard where you pay its mana value, and it comes back onto the field with a finality counter, and it has haste. So incredible card, great way to get. If you get this, definitely think about it. If you have a good amount of sagas, not necessarily any graveyard deck, but if you have an alright amount of sagas and you think you can get a ton of value out of this, run it. Then X-Death and gaining 3 life right off the start, and then you get to transform it if you have 6 or more permanents in your graveyard. And what does it become? Well, it gets trample, and its power is determined by the amount of permanents that you have in your yard. Amazing. Amazing. Your graveyard is just going to start filling up, and this is going to get bigger, bruisier, and they're going to have to deal with it eventually. Then we have our good old Pixie here, and this is just basic, sweet, simple creature. Just when it attacks, Surveil. So you get to look at the top, and you can put it in the bin if you want, if you feel like you need to fill it up. Great card. Then Fight On. Return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Yes, this can be used outside of graveyard decks, but graveyard decks are going to eat so good with this card. Then Diamond Weapon, so it gets cheaper to cast for each permanent in your graveyard, and then prevent all damage that would be dealt to it. Great, and it's immune, and an 8/8. So the quicker you fill up your yard, the better this card's going to get. Great card, great card. Golbez. Basically, artifact enters, Surveil 1. Cool. Once again, you get to sculpt the top of your deck the way that you want, and you get to fill up your graveyard as need be. And then at your end step, you got 4 or more artifacts on the field. Return creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Great. Then, if you have 8 or more artifacts under your control, each opponent loses life equal to the card's power that you just returned to hand. Now, Shinra Reinforcement, when it enters, you mill 3 cards, gain 3 life. Fill up the yard. Evil Reawakened, you return target creature card from your graveyard, and then put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. For 5, get it, grab it. Matoya, and this one is great because in the case that you're using a lot of Surveil, you're drawing a card off of every single Surveil. So you either draw the card that you just saw and left on the top of your deck, or you draw the card underneath it because you filled up the yard. Then Esper Origins, you Surveil 2 right off the start, you gain 2 life. So good. Terra, this is a fun one because you're going to mill 5, and then you put 1 enchantment that you milled out of that 5 back into your hand. This goes back to, it's not going to be every single graveyard deck, but if you have a lot of enchantments or sagas, enchantment sagas, right, that you're running, this card is going to be unstoppable for you. And the flip side isn't too bad either. And finally for our graveyard deck, Vinel, great. Yeah, I'll mill 2 and then pick my favorite card and bring it back. I think this card is kind of an auto-include in basically any graveyard deck, even if you don't have the second half. So now we are going to dive into landfall cards and the landfall deck, really, that I see potentially being formed here. And we have Ride the Shoe Puff. Keep playing lands, keep getting your creatures bigger. Simple, basic, we love it. And then Summon Titan. The cool thing here that it has is it can kind of fit in that graveyard deck, but also the landfall deck. I like the landfall side of it a little bit better, which is why it's part of that deck. But number 1 is mill 5. That's why it can go in the graveyard. But then number 2 is return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Sweet, sweet, sweet card. And it's a beater if you need it to be. Sandworm. So this is a way to really get the landfall deck kind of started and online. Because yeah, you can destroy a target land, but you probably got a landfall trigger off of that. And then you get another basic land that comes in, triggers your landfall for you off of that land. You can use it on your opponent's lands, but I think it's an interesting little tactic to use it on your own also. And then we have the Poo Poo UFO. This one is really interesting because you can only really play 1 land a turn. I think there's maybe 1 card, maybe Zell lets you play 2. But if you get stuck with additional lands in your hand, you can tap this and put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Get that ramp, get the advantage. Then Sabo Tender, I talked about this in a short that I have. So yeah, you're not going to kill them. You're probably not even going to deal like 10 damage to them off of this guy. But the matter of fact is you're going to keep pinging them as long as this guy stays out. And worst case scenario, they have to use a piece of removal that they own to kill this just so they don't get pinged every single turn. Then Tifa Lockhart. So I don't think I have to talk about this one very much, but land enters, double Tifa's power. You get 3, maybe 4 lands to enter if possible. Tifa is almost a one-hit kill. If you're running lands, you're running a lot of lands, you're running a lot of effects to get more lands onto the battlefield per turn than just 1, Tifa's your girl. Tifa's a winner. And finally, Gladiolus is going to be a killer because when he enters, you search your library for land, but also the landfall effect is a target creature gets +2/+2 and trample until the end of turn. That is like a combat trick every time a land enters. That's great. That's great. This card makes the landfall decks. Alright, next up we are diving into the Spell-Slinger deck. And as you see, I have Talal here. You get a 1/1 colorless hero token whenever you cast a non-creature spell. Okay, cool. If you spent 4 or more to cast that spell, you draw 2. And if you spent 8 or more, you end up sacrificing this guy. It deals damage equal to the amount spent on the non-creature spell that you cast to each opponent. So seems like a great card. Seems like a real beater if you have a really high-end non-creature spell in your deck. I'm curious to see exactly how a Spell-Slinger deck works, especially with a couple high-cost spells, but this is your guy if you pull some nice high-cost spells. Then we have Astrologian's Planosphere, and this is going to be an equipment with job select that we talked about at the very beginning. And the cool thing about this is, so if you're casting a lot of cheap non-creature spells, your guy keeps getting +1/+1s. And then if you draw 3 cards on that turn, you get another +1/+1. So this is a great way just to pump up your guy and make it so the equipment doesn't seem like it's that big of a problem initially until it's too big. And then Ether, this one, you use it once basically, so you exile the artifact and you get 1 blue, and then you copy the next spell that you cast that's an instant or sorcery. I think there's going to be a great way to get additional triggers off of those things that care about when you cast non-creature spells in this deck. Quistis, and this is going to be a really interesting one because you can choose any graveyard, cast an instant or sorcery spell from it when Quistis enters. This one's going to be a good one because if you see something you like in their deck that's in the graveyard, drop this guy in and it's going to trigger those non-creature spell triggers. Then we have this guy, and this is the start of something really interesting that I noticed when I was watching all the previews come out, and then I actually saw a deck kind of built with it in the Loading Ready Run Friday preview thing that they had done. But you end up creating a 0/1 black wizard creature that deals 1 damage every time you cast a non-creature spell to an opponent. You get one of those when this guy comes in. I know I'm going to sound crazy, but bear with me. I think that wizard token that you create can be super deadly and will be overlooked. Let's look a little further. Cornered by black mages. So you force your opponent to sacrifice a creature of their choice, and then you get another one of these wizard tokens. So between those two cards, you just got 2 wizard tokens that are going to ping for 1 each every time you cast a non-creature spell. You see where I'm going? You see? Now we go into the Emperor of Palamecia. You can generate a blue or red, and then when you cast a non-creature spell, if you spent 4 or more, put a +1/+1 on this guy, and then if it has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you end up transforming it. And then it deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard. And that's an attack trigger. So that one is going to hammer a ton of damage into your opponent and really chip them away. Now we have Kuja, which at your end step, you create one of those wizard tokens. And then if you control 4 or more wizards, you can transform them. But the wizard token, once again, now you have 3 ways to create it. And if a wizard you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, double that damage. So now all of your little wizard guys now deal 2 damage. This could be deadly. Then the card everybody's been talking about is VV. So there are certain combos and things that can come out of it, but you pay nothing and you create X of blue or red mana, where X ends up being VV's power. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a counter on VV and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's giving us that black mage effect with a little extra something. Ooh. And finally, in our Spell-Slinger that I want to talk about is so good. You draw 2 cards, you create the token, you cast more non-creature spells, you get more value, you deal more damage. This, I wasn't excited about its Spell-Slinger aspect, but this actually sounds a little fun. Next up, we are diving into equipment decks. So looking at all these equipment cards, I want to say I don't think if you have just a job select deck, it's going to be viable on its own. But if you have a lot of the higher power cards and cards that make you be able to move around equipment that you have, or fetch equipment for free, or double the effects of equipment when it deals damage, this could be an incredible deck. But don't just draw or open 4 or 5 job select cards and be like, I'm an equipment deck, because that's probably not going to do it for you. First up, we have Weapons Vendor. When it enters, you draw a card. Great. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, you can pay 1 and just move an equipment around to a different creature. Great. The equip value on some of these cards is so expensive, so being able to do it for 1, fantastic. Then Stolen Uniform. So you basically get to steal an equipment somebody else owns, or you can choose your own if need be, and attach it to one of your creatures. And then at the end of the turn, the equipment goes back and unattaches from the creature. So you can use it for a cheap equip cost on your end, or you can go and steal something from an opponent and unequip it from maybe a troublesome creature. Such a good card. Adelbert Steiner, if you have a bunch of equipment and you're running an equipment deck, he gets +1/+1 for each equipment. Lifelink. Bare bones, simple, easy, you know what to do. Then Titus, when one enters, Titus gets +1/+1. And then on top of that, when he attacks, you can lock down a creature during your combat. Great, great. A little evasion kind of thing while also beefing himself up. And Coral Sword is an interesting one because it has flash. When it comes in, you auto attach it so you don't have to pay the equip cost. And until the end of turn, that creature has first strike. It's going to be played out more as a combat trick than an actual equipment itself. So be on the lookout for this. Buster Sword, we've talked about it before, just a great card. The fact that it's +3/+2 is amazing itself. And then when you deal combat damage, you draw a card, and then you may cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. Yeah, you do a big amount of damage and you can play a free spell. Even if you put it on a hero, which I don't know why you would, but if you put it on a hero, you can cast something that is 4 or less from your hand. Great card. The Samurai's Katana is +2/+2, but it gives trample and haste. It's not bad, all things considered, as far as the ability, and even just putting it on the 1/1 hero. That turns it into a big beefy creature that kind of needs dealt with a little bit. Ninja Blades, yet another job select that we have here, but I love this card. Look at the second ability in quotes, right? So it's attached to a creature. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, great, then discard a card. Okay, fills up our yard. That player loses life equal to the discarded card's mana value. So it's great in an equipment deck. It's great in a graveyard deck because it incentivizes you to get rid of a higher cost card to deal that damage directly to your opponent. And if it's in a graveyard deck, who knows? You play maybe Fight On and you get it back. Sweet value. Machinist Arsenal, yet again a job select card, having 2 equipments on the battlefield, not even necessarily attached. The creature it's attached to gets +4/+4. Great. The Masamune, getting additional triggers, great if you have a creature that this makes sense to put on. And it's 2 to equip, so it's easy to move around the board as need be. First strike kind of gives it evasion and protection a little bit. Awesome card. Cloud, this is the big one though. So Cloud enters, you get to search your library for that one equipment that you really want to get on the field. Anything that's equipped to Cloud, the ability of that equipment triggers an additional time. So great, that gives you so much additional value out of your equipment. Cloud is going to be one of those flags, those green flags that says, hey, look at an equipment deck. Then Gilgamesh is just an amazing card. When he enters or attacks, you look at the top 6 and you put any number of equipment cards from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then when you put 1 or more equipment onto the battlefield that way, you may attach one of them to a samurai you control. So you can attach them to Gilgamesh, but also imagine hitting 3 of them even, and having say one of them be the Machinist Arsenal. Now Gilgamesh is a 12/12 just off of that, because you have 3 artifacts entering, not even considering that you might have others. Great artifact equipment card. keep this one in mind. This is another one similar to Cloud. If you get it, you might just play it and just might be pushed into equipment, potentially. Firion, in equipped creatures you control have haste. Great. And then when a non-token equipment enters, you create a copy of it. You sacrifice it at the beginning of your next upkeep. So you get to keep it through your opponent's turns, which is great, and the equip ability costs 2 less to activate, so you have potential to make the equip ability 0. Amazing card. And finally, for the equipment deck, Barrett Wallace. It incentivizes you to not just stack up all of your equipment, but spread it out amongst your board, which could be really good. Or if you have a lot of job select things, this will help too, because if you have 3 job select heroes that are equipped with their equipment, you're dealing 3 damage just off of Barrett attacking, not even hitting yet. So potential to land 7 just between Barrett attacking, and that's it. Now we looked at the equipment. Let's dive into the little goofy special deck, and that is birds. So first up, we have our good old fat chocobo, and on the first lore counter, you create yourself a 2/2 bird. And the thing that you'll see is whenever a land you control enters, this token gets +1/+0 until the end of turn. And that is going to be what those bird tokens are going to do just across the board. So I don't have to read it every single time. And then creatures you control gain trample. Also for the next 3 abilities of lore counters on the fat chocobo. So yes, the bird deck can also slide into a nice little landfall deck, but I think it's funny just to have a weird typal synergy here. Next up, we have raising a chocobo. So when it enters, you create one of those 2/2 bird tokens, and then at the beginning of your first main phase, if you control 4 or more birds, you get to flip it into the black chocobo. So when it transforms, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tab. Triggers that landfall effect, and then for landfall, whenever a land you control enters, birds get +1/+0 until the end of turn. So your bird tokens will trigger, and this will trigger for each one of your birds. Next, chocobo racetrack. Whenever a land you control enters, create a 2/2 green bird token, like we talked about. Great, so you have landfall that creates birds, that has a landfall trigger that makes the birds bigger. So you're just creating and pumping them up like crazy. It's a fun little artifact to put on the battlefield and just create a go wide board with it. Next up, Choco Comet. And this deals X damage to any target, because X is in the casting cost, that's where it comes from. And then you create one of those bird tokens in addition to that. Great card, especially for a bird deck. I think it's going to be interesting just to see if you can really get good value out of the dealing X damage also. But that's not what this deck's about. It's only about birds. Now, call the Mountain Chocobo. You search your library for a mountain, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then create a bird token. And then in addition to that, it has flashback. Great. Now we have Gisal Greens, and this creates a bird token and it also has flashback. So next we have our health food junkie Quinoa, and this is great with the bird deck because even though it doesn't create birds, when you would create a bird token, you create that bird token and a 1/1 green frog token also with it. Great little effect. Yeah, it's not bird synergy specific, but it's going to get you a wider board and more things to throw in front of big stuff. Now we have Saz, Ketzroy, but the thing that we care about in this specific deck is the first part. You either get a bird that you're looking for or you get a basic land. Now we have a 3-color legendary bird. You get multiple landfall triggers and you get to fish for a bird from your deck into your hand. And then in addition to that, has landfall of itself where it will get +1/+0 until end of turn. Great little thing. Then we have Traveling Chocobo, and you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play lands and cast birds from the top of your library. Great. And if a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability, it triggers an additional time. So all of our landfall on our bird tokens happens again. And finally, for our little bird deck, we had to obviously put in Bartz and Boko with affinity for birds. So what you're going to want to do is any landfall triggers, you want to play that first. And then after all your birds are beefed up, you play Bartz and Boko, slam it down, and then deal a bunch of damage to your opponent. Great. All right, we are in the final stretch. All we have left to talk about is the heater cards. All right, for the first heater of the day, let's talk about our Ancient Turtle. Yes, it is an 8 cost, but you know what? If you get that much mana out, especially with 3 forest, slam this guy down because it gives you essentially an extra 20 life, but also can swing for 8 if need be. And it has vigilance, so it won't tap. Hey, if they remove it, because they pay the 3 ward cost and hit you with Sephiroth's intervention, you get 10 treasure tokens tapped. Next up, Clash of the Econs. And you can choose one or more. The real thing here is the last two. You can remove a lore counter from a target saga, which it says here, removing lore counters doesn't make the saga trigger again. Or you can put a lore counter on target saga you control. That will make it trigger again. So keep that in mind. Removing it doesn't trigger a saga. Adding it definitely will. Great card. Garnet. So this is another one that is going to deal with those lore counters in that saga deck that may or may not be a thing. You're definitely creating a saga deck if you have Garnet, right? And then Garnet gets huge, and then you can just manipulate the saga chapter that you want to trigger. Such a good card. Omega. So what Omega has here is for each opponent, you tap up to 1 non-land permanent that opponent controls. In our pre-release, you're going to have 1. And then put X stun counters on each of those permanents, so the 1 permanent. You gain X life, and X is the number of non-basic lands you control. This is going to be great if you pull a bunch of towns, create a little town deck, throw Omega in there. You're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine, and their creature's probably never untapping. Now, Blitzball Shot, great little combat trick. +3/+3 and gains trample. It's a 2 cost. Yeah, why would you not run it? Such a good card. Then another one like that, Haste Magic, 1 in a red. Play a creature that you really want to put this on if he's not already on the battlefield. You go to combat, you trigger this, gains haste, you attack through, get to exile that card, and then on your second main, you can play it. Or if it's another instant that's really going to help you out, play it right in the middle of combat. Might as well. Cool little card, great way to get through your deck, and add so much firepower to it. Then Summon Anima, and you have your first 3 chapters on your saga. You draw a card, you lose 1 life. Okay, a little spooky, but your 4th chapter, your opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice and then loses 3 life. And it's a Menacer 4/4. Great, and you're going to get a chance to attack 2 times. Then Realms Sketching. This is an incredible little card. Probably one of the best copy effects we have in Magic now. But you create a token that's a copy of an artifact, creature, or land. Cool thing about this, you can create a token that is a copy of summons because they are creatures. So even though it doesn't say enchantment, that's fine. That's fine. You got it. Then Random Encounter. You shuffle your library, you mill 4 cards. Perfect for our little graveyard stuff. Put each creature card milled this way onto the battlefield. Ooh, they gain haste. Alright. And at the beginning of the end step, return those creatures to your hand. And then you can do it again because it has flashback. Play it, get out all your big creatures, swing, and then you can play it again if need be. Yeah, it's a little expensive, but you're probably playing it to close out the game. Next up, Memories Returning. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand, then choose an opponent. So you're one opponent in our case. And they put one on the bottom of your library, then you put one in your hand, then your opponent puts one on the bottom of your library, and then you get to keep the last one. I like these little cool, quick minigame style effects in Magic. Think of like Fact or Fiction. This is like a different goofy style of Fact or Fiction. I'm excited to play it in Commander, but I think in this case it's still a great card in pre-release. Travel the Overworld. So affinity for towns. Clearly if you have towns, you're playing this card. Great little card. And then draw 4 cards. I think if you have a handful of towns, you play it. I think if you don't end up having really any at all, you might put it in the bin, but if you have towns, it's so good. Imagine paying 2 to draw 4. Incredible. Then Cactar. So every other turn, Cactar goes back to your hand, but you can attack on that turn. So you play Cactar, has summoning sickness, goes around. Second turn, Cactar is on the battlefield. You attack with Cactar. Then at your end step, it comes back to your hand. Then you can play it again on the next turn. Cool little turn off style effect. Yeah, maybe it doesn't get you there in the long run, and you know, it is just a 3/3, but it's a 3/3 for a green with trample. So a good little place for those combat tricks to go to, right? And then Aerith. Also, we have lifelink here. Whenever you gain life, Aerith gets +1/+1. And then when Aerith dies, put X +1/+1s on each legendary creature you control. So if you have a deck with a handful of legendary creatures, Aerith might be the person that you need. I think it might be hard to get a super overwhelming effect of the second ability in pre-release, but if you draw a handful of legendary creatures that just seem to line up perfectly, yeah, it's gonna win games. It's gonna close out games for sure. And especially if you have some sort of life link or some sort of life gain where you can really take control of the game. And White Aura Sight, this is going to be cool because it's like an Oblivion Ring, and some people might not know what that is, but basically exile target non-land permanent until this leaves the battlefield. But even better, it taps for 1 white mana. Great. Zac Fair is our second to last card, and when Zac enters, you get a +1/+1 counter on Zac, and then you can pay 1 and sacrifice Zac. Target creature gets indestructible, and then that creature that gets indestructible, all of the counters that were on Zac and the equipments that were attached to Zac move to that creature that you just made indestructible. That creature can get massive. Now, yeah, there needs to be a little bit of setup for that, so maybe it's too slow, but it would be cool to really pull it off and see it pull off, right? And finally, our last card is Vincent Valentine. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a number of +1/+1 counters on Vincent equal to that creature's power that just died. Gonna make Vincent huge. And then when Vincent attacks, you may transform it. So you have all your counters on it and gains trample, lifelink. And when this guy dies, you return to the battlefield face up. I think that's an auto remove if you have a chance. All right, everybody, that is it for the preview, for the pre-release. Thank you for sticking with me for so long. I hope you got something out of this. I'm glad that we were able to take some time to look through, see the cycles that are in there, talk about removal, talk about different deck types, and talk about cards that are just too good to pass up. Hopefully, this can get you to win your pre-release. All right, everybody, until next time, make sure you get that win, and be kind, be safe. I'll catch you later.